All right, Jen, I'm ready whenever you are.
Yeah. You can start. Can you see the start the webinar on your end?
Yeah, do I just press it?
Yes, if you're ready.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I see the numbers are jumping up as I speak. Thank you so much for coming today or this evening, this morning, wherever you guys are located. As you guys are coming on, I'm just gonna continue to introduce myself here. I truly appreciate each one of you for coming here today. Please feel free to use our chat log to message, say hi, say anything that you guys would like. It's such a pleasure to see all of you here. So my name is Armando Bernal. I am one of Michelle's board certified behavior analysts. I am here to help out today, answer questions, support you guys to any kind of needs that you may have. One thing about me that's more specific on why I do what I do is that I am also diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I was diagnosed at 3. I'll go into maybe some more detail later in the presentation, but truly it is a pleasure to be here with each of you. And with that being said, as we continue to grow, I'll go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see our presentation for this evening. Again, thank you all so much for being here. So let me go ahead and find it. There it is. All right. And our amazing Jen, who's a part of our team as well, will be answering any kind of questions that you may have while I'm going through our presentation, because I'm not going to be able to see the chat while I'm doing this, but I'll look through it once we're done, and then I'll also be able to help out. If you guys stick around to the very end, we'll also be giving away a couple of goodies for you guys, being able to be a part of this, whether it's an extra session through Michelle's program or many other prizes as well. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and keep it going. So let me do a slideshow. I think you guys are seeing this. Maybe a little bit slow. We'll see how this goes. All right, so today we're going to be talking about sensory sensitivity and autism spectrum disorder. So like I said, my name is Armando Bernal. I have had autism spectrum disorder, and I was diagnosed at an early age, at the age of 3. Doctors told my mother that I might as well learn sign language because I'm never going to be able to speak. And if that's the case, I wouldn't be presenting right now, right? So I am one of Michelle's board certified behavior analysts. I work with her for her Champions for Our Children program, where we discuss how we can better support all children with a diagnosis. So on your right, you'll see that this is Michelle and all of her amazingness, as well as her daughter Juliana, who is diagnosed with autism as well. And on the next slide, it's going to show you a little bit about the story of Champions for Our Children, but also Michelle's story as well as Juliana. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you guys to be able to see that. I'm going to minimize me so that way it's easier to see as well.
I remember when I got pregnant with my daughter, I felt so grateful and so blessed. My life up until that point had been pretty rocky. I'd had a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, and I finally thought that I was turning a corner and God was blessing me with this beautiful gift of a child. And I was just, yes, finally something was going in my way. And then when she was born, she was just absolutely perfect. I had all of these dreams and expectations for her. I thought of all the things that I thought she was going to do. Right after her first birthday, I started to notice her behavior change. She went from, saying Matt. He was obsessed with Dora the Explorer, Mama, Dada. She was saying it all. Good girl, say Matt. Hit all of her milestones up until that point. She walked at 1. She was eating solid. She just, she looked really good. And then I just remember her, it felt almost overnight or very quickly, where her demeanor just changed. She went from this super happy baby to crying and tantruming, just frustrated all the time. And I remember saying to my mom one day during one of these tantrums, like, where did my happy baby go? But I didn't think anything past it. I think I was kind of not ready to fathom that something could be off, even though maybe the telltale signs were there. Rest. Gotta get shot. Tiny. Started to lose the words that she had gained. She wasn't saying mama anymore. She wasn't saying ma'am. She just seemed really disconnected from us. Instead of playing with her toys, she would take them, dump them all out of her toy box, and just start twisting them around her hands aimlessly with no intended purpose. She was really kind of in denial about it. And then I remember one day we were in the middle of a store, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she just like started like screaming and yelling like somebody had slapped her. I don't even know what the problem was, and I was so mortified. I didn't even know what to do. I was so scared. I literally just left the half full cart in the store, picked her up, and just ran out of there. Never went to that store again. I just didn't even know what to think. And that was probably the first time it really kind of stung for me that maybe something is wrong. They diagnosed her. They didn't diagnose her right away. They said that she was too young for a diagnosis. I didn't even know what they meant when they said that. I was like, diagnosed what? I just had no idea what they were talking about. And then they said, we'll come back in if you're not seeing progress. And I said, okay, and a couple months later, I'm watching these speech therapists play with her on the floor. I'm not seeing any progress and felt like she was getting a little worse. And then we went for our 2-year-old wellness visit, and the doctor said that she was behind if she wasn't using 20 words with intent. And that was probably just the knife to my heart. At that point, I really couldn't deny that something was up with her anymore. So then I called the county back in, and she was diagnosed on the spectrum. And I remember that day, and it was worst days of my life. It was my darkest hour. I could easily say that as a mother, as a woman, as just a human being. It was probably one of the hardest times I had ever gone through. And I remember just being I went from being so happy with God, so thankful, to being so pissed at doing this to her and wrecking this beautiful gift He had given me. And for a while there, I struggled. I struggled to figure out what this meant, or what we were going to do, or how this was going to define her. All those dreams I had for her future were just completely shattered, and I just had no idea what was going to happen next. And I went from just hopeful to just complete blank when I thought about the future. One night I was thinking, I'm going to die one day, and who's going to care for her like me? And something about that thought just snapped me out of my depression and my anger and my fear and said, listen, we got to get to work here. I promised that when she was born, I was going to be the best mother I could be to her. And that promise hasn't changed. In fact, she needs me more now than ever, not less. She needs me now more than ever. And I didn't know at the time what we were capable of, or what having those changes, that mindset shift for me was going to do. But I wanted to know that at the end of every night, I could look myself in the mirror with confidence and say, you do everything you could, Michelle, to give her the best possible. And if the answer was yes, then that was a good day. And I wanted the answer to be yes, 100%. And no matter where the cards fell, I know I could leave this earth saying I gave her everything I had, no regrets. And as I've navigated this world with her and walked away that day after having that thought, I really just grabbed the bull by the horns. I became her fiercest advocate. I'm not a special education master's degree teacher. I never had any training in ABA, but I knew that I was going to learn whatever I needed to learn to be really strong for her. And Juliana lost all of her language. She was verbal when she was diagnosed. We taught her sign language. Show me. Then she went from sign language to word approximations. Then she started to speak. She went from the most restrictive preschool environment. She was in 614, most restrictive preschool, special education preschool environment you could be in. To now, where she is almost 8 years old. She's in second grade class in a gen ed school, integrated class with typical peers. She speaks beautifully now. It's cute, like. She has a personality. She has conversation skills. There's still things that we need to work on, but for the most part, her future went from lack to now having possibilities. And none of that could have happened had I not kind of gotten out of my own way and really hit the ground running and started to take action for her. And I can't say that I can do that for every family coach, but what I can tell them is I will have them feeling like I did, looking myself in the mirror, you looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I was everything I could be for her today. I have no regrets. And whatever happens, it happens. It's really for us as parents to know we fulfilled the duty that we promised when we had these children, which was the best versions of ourselves to live, to raise these children. I've helped now hundreds of mothers, coach them one-on-one to do the same things I did, to help them to be strong, to help them to craft plans where we're seeing constant progress. This is what I want to do. I want to give you the chance that Juliana's had. I want to give you every opportunity to give your child that kind of place.
And great times. Birthday, love, Jane.
It's always such an incredible experience to be able to see her child just be able to grow and learn and see the amount of incredible things that can be accomplished with therapy, with support, with family support. That's something that with my own family, I know that I would not be where I am today without them. And it's somewhere that each one of you are at now. And I don't know each of your stories, but I do know that each of you have love for your son, love for your daughter, and are just looking for more support, something to help them further. And that's something that we can do with this program, is that we're able to provide that kind of support. Yeah, there we go. All right. So this one presentation, right, is going to be focused more on the sensory processing disorder. It's going to be focused more on how to help out with more issues that occur when a child may be overstimulated, or that there are more behaviors presented because there's just so many different things that are going on in the world at the one time. Give an example of my own issues that I've had as well, where I took a trip with my wife as well as her sister to Arkansas. And we went to this one area, this rock cutting place where you were able to get quartz if you were able to mine it out and all of this stuff. But we went into this very small space to pay for the experience. And so I went in there. However, it was so crowded and there was just a lot of noises and sounds and rocks and things that I wasn't familiar with, things I didn't research beforehand. And because of that, I needed to step away from myself. I needed to just take a minute to get away from all of that, because I was very much hypersensitive to that kind of feeling, that kind of sensation that was currently happening. And so that's what this is relating to. So sensory processing disorder has two forms. There's both the hypersensitivity and the hyposensitivity for environmental stimuli. And it's exactly what I was describing. It could be lights, it could be sounds, it could be people, it could be new settings or new stimuli, things that aren't familiar, new smells that are just overwhelming for an individual with a sensory processing disorder. And they don't know how to necessarily react to it, or they don't know necessarily how to handle the things that are happening, right? So with that, we have first the hyposensitive to better understand what's happening, right? These are people that have very faint sensitivities. They are receiving little sensory information. So this would be an example of not being able to feel something that is very spicy. They may not find it spicy at all. They may say, oh yeah, this is nothing at all, right? It's a neat party trick. But what's important to understand is that it can cause a lot of harm for somebody if they're not able to taste certain things that may be dangerous to their body, or they may not be able to feel certain things that may be dangerous to their body. It's a lot like touching a hot stove. Maybe it's not as hot to them. And so then this becomes an issue because they don't mind touching this hot stove when we all know that it's very dangerous for our body. Whereas the opposite is hypersensitivity, where they're able to experience the stimuli very strongly, that they're able to understand what is the true impact of what's going on around them. There's just too much for them to take in, and they don't know exactly what to do with all of this emotion or all of these feelings that they have. And so there's just sudden outbursts of what they're trying to really express, rather than saying that they need a break or they need to have a minute to themselves. They don't know how to express that. And so what happens is there is this big outburst, right? So an example would be background music in the supermarket may be too intense for an individual and may not be able to stand being in a grocery store for that long to really understand how to manage their own feelings in those points in time. So there's different signs that we can go off of, right? So it's people experiencing this sense of hypotaste. So they may find flavors dull or may not taste anything at all. So, I mean, examples of this is like I had said earlier, what about spices? If they're not able to know if something is spicy, or they have any kind of sensation towards sour or sweet or other areas like that, they may not be able to understand what is wrong about certain aspects. So a good example of this is what we call pica, which is eating or mouthing non-edible items. And so they may eat Play-Doh or grass or dirt and say there's nothing wrong with it because there is no sense of taste or sensation that we typically would refer to that lets us know, hey, this isn't a good thing to have, right? Or maybe they eat the hottest pepper and they aren't able to understand that this could cause severe damage inside of them because their body isn't used to such heated objects or spice objects. So it's important for us to understand, and these are good tips just to help out, that to make sure that they have to have strong flavored foods available to snack on, or using varieties of different textures of food for the meals, right? So that way they can understand that difference of what are these different tastes. Can I eat this? Can I not eat this? You can try to include spicier dishes during the week or keep non-food items out of reach. So if you know that your child eats Play-Doh or eats dirt or is not appropriate with some of the items, right? Always being next to them when they are starting to eat these certain, or when they start to play with these certain items. So that way, if you see that they're about to eat the Play-Doh, you know to push their hand down, or you know to only give them a certain amount of time before they try and decide to eat it, things like that, right? Or letting them play, but letting them play next to you. So that way, if they try to eat dirt or eat sand or whatever it is, you know, okay, hey, we can prevent this. Or also you can provide them with something else that could provide them that same sensation that they're looking for. So if they want a sensation of eating Play-Doh, or they want a same sensation of eating sand or something that is more appropriate could possibly be a silicone chewy that they can use. That is more so appropriate rather than having something that could be dangerous, such as eating dirt with all kinds of bacteria and gross things in there. You could also teach your child which foods are edible and which are not, if they're able to understand that, right? Especially eating items that are dangerous. At one point, I had a child that was eating glass, and we had to make sure that the child understood how inappropriate this was and how to keep safe. And that took a lot of effort and a lot of time, but that child was able to better understand what is appropriate to eat and what's not appropriate to eat. So we talk about these, the sensation of like eating things that they're not supposed to, right? This is more of that hypersensitivity, where we have that maybe certain foods may be overpowering or maybe feel rough. So an example of this is possibly a child is saying that his pizza that is only been cooked for about 10, 20 seconds is now starting to be too hot for him to handle, that he's not able to eat this and he needs to blow on it and needs to be sitting out in the cold for 5 minutes or things like that, right? It's also important to note that if a child is seeing a certain food and they may gag or vomit, that is also a hypersensitivity. It's when these flavors of foods, flavors of items or things that are tasted, right, have such strong flavors that they're not able to really handle them. And again, rather than just chalking it up to, no, you're going to eat this no matter what, right? it's all about, especially in this day and age, it's about self-advocacy, and it's about independence, and it's about teaching that child to know how to tell their parents or their friends or their family that they don't feel like they're able to eat this, or that there is something wrong, right? Being able to listen to your children is going to be so significant, because they're the ones who can tell you what's really going on with them, rather than you having to guess and determine what the true expectations are going to be for them, right? Some other examples, though, would be to eat smooth snacks like yogurt, to maybe make blender dishes that won't overwhelm them, right? So if we're big and heavy on red pepper on pizza, or a lot of cheese, right? Maybe do less cheese or no red pepper, or being able to limit the amount of spices that we may have, right? And we can work up our way to using spices for them, right? But just not immediately assuming that they're going to like every single flavor that's being given to them. It's significant to work our way up to certain steps. Again, I had a parent that was working with her child today, and I had to talk with her because the child, and this is off of taste and more of sight and more of visuals, but he was so hyper focused on being with the father that anytime the mom was alone with the child, then that child would start to cry and throw a tantrum. And the mom was saying, well, I need to be with him alone so that way he can be able to sleep, right? And I said, whoa, 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 let's back it up. He can't even be in the same room with you without crying. And so we need to work on his ability to accept and not be overwhelmed with the idea that dad is gone in this moment, and just be okay with you being there. And so with this moment as well, is teaching the child that it's okay to eat the foods that you're going to now, but we need to have a bit of a starting point for them. And then we can work up, okay, well, let's add pepper, let's add salt, let's add paprika, all of these different spices to them. So that way they can better understand how to appreciate and how to accept the foods that are being given to them. So another version of this is going to be smell. So there's a hyposensitivity of smell. Again, this is when they're not, hypo means that they don't have that degree of understanding where the the smell is coming from. They don't understand that bacon smell, or they don't understand the pizza smell, or anything like that, right? There's only faint sense that they're able to really observe in that sense. And so, Mrs. Ali, I see that you raised your hand and gave me a notification. If you have a question, please feel free to write your question in the chat, and our amazing Jen will be able to respond to you as well. But this hyposensitivity, right, is getting them to better understand how to accept certain items that are being given to them, rather than trying to taste it as a substitute, because that's typically what happens. Is if a child isn't able to smell something, the next thing they're going to do is try and taste something. So the same thing if they were given some chalk that may look like candy, they may try and smell it. And if they don't smell anything, then the next thing they do is maybe try and taste it or eat it, because of the fact that their smell is not as strong as their taste. So they start doing that. So again, if we're having a hyposensitivity, the best thing that you can do in this situation is to buy something or to use something that has stronger than normal scent. So that way the child is able to better understand what they need to do, or I'm sorry, what they are able to have within their body or have not within their body. So that way they have a better understanding. It's also, they may struggle with body odor, right? They may not better understand that they have some kind of body odor, especially if you have a teenager or an adult that just has this hyposensitivity. And so it's also significant, maybe buy them body odor, body wash or body odor or perfume, anything that can help them and teach them to understand, like, hey, every morning, no matter what, you need to put on this cologne, you need to put on this perfume. So that way they can better accept what is going on, rather than having to maybe even be possibly made fun of because of those kind of things, right? It's significant to do that. As a behavior analyst, I focus a lot on social appropriation, right? What is socially appropriate? And so is it appropriate socially to smell by, even if you don't mean to? No, it's not. And so in order to avoid any kind of mockery, any kind of jokes that may be had, right? Assisting the child to better understand, hey, this is what we need to do in order to be able to go into the world and be able to be successful. So on the opposite side, like I was saying as well, it kind of allows you to better understand. I think you see where I'm going with. If hypo is a negative, or it's a faint smell, it's the inability to smell things like we typically do. Hypersensitivity is going to be this ability to smell better than the normal person, right? And so if we have children that are not able to smell very well, and so we get them stronger perfumes. The opposite would be true, where if they're able to smell very well, or they're not able to withstand certain soap smells or fragrance smells, right? Getting them fragrance-free soap, getting them fragrance-free shampoo could be beneficial. If they're not liking the idea of sweat and not being able to smell right, and they're wanting to quickly take a shower, that's all well and good. But they need to be able to tell you when this is going to occur, be able to provide, hey, I need a break, or hey, can I take a shower, to allow you to know what's happening. What we do here in this program is not force any kind of situation down a child's throat, but rather focus on the self-advocacy, focus on the communication aspect, to allow these children to understand, like, hey, you are able to do the things that you're wanting to do, but you need to tell me first. You need to let me know what is going on in your head. And this is in a number of ways, right? It could be through functional words, it could be verbal, it could also be nonverbal, where it's through sign language, or it's through picture cards, excuse me, or it could be through a tablet, to better understand what that expectation is, right? Setting the expectation so the child is able to know how you need to communicate with them. So tips, again, with hyper and hyposensitivity, right? It all, the best way to see it is look at which one your child is doing, evaluate your child, and determine, hey, is my child hypersensitive or hyposensitive? Because everyone is one or the other in that sense, right? It's maybe the lights are too bright, and so you start getting a dimmer when it comes to sight, right? Maybe the lights are just too much, or you put something over the lights that you have in your house, and put maybe, yeah, exactly like it says on the right side, like bright lights and vibrant colors. So some kind of padding, some kind of fabric that lessens the light, or changing the level of light that is needed in order to see, right? And again, it's about what is appropriate for the child. So I'd recommend using this as an opportunity to have the child speak to you, have that child be able to tell you what is it they are wanting, in order to better provide that sense of control for them, better provide that sense of um, independence, rather than focusing on that dependence that they typically were needing from you. I think one thing to just very be specific as well is to teach the children not to look directly at the sun. Surprisingly, that's something that needs to always be done, right? Especially with our children with autism. That's important to, if they start to look up, they may have this fascination, but it may really hurt them. And so it's also important to teach them, when is it appropriate to look at the sun, or look up in the sky, or look up at what in the clouds, things like that, and when is it not appropriate. And so keeping them in safety is very significant, right? For on the sight side of things, people that experience this hypervision may have this acute vision, which has allowed them to notice tiny things, such as fluff on the carpet, that they may also be distorted as well. So, for instance, there's sometimes that we talk about children with autism that may be so fixated on lava lamps, maybe fixated on carpets, or carpet, or couches, or just many things like that, right? And it's significant to just understand that it's, again, not something that they can necessarily help, but there's ways that we can better support them, so that way they don't get overwhelmed, or they don't get overstimulated. So a good example right here would be blackout curtains to reduce sunlight. If a child is not able to really be okay with their bedroom because there's so much sunlight coming into their household, then it may be beneficial for you to provide blackout curtains, or maybe beneficial to have them use sunglasses. Just thinking about the different ways that can be supporting your child, as well as better understanding what is needed in order to really see them overcome these kind of concerns, right? So there are some things, though, that are more so not evidence-based, that are evidence-based, right? So it's very significant to me as a behavior analyst as well to focus on what is evidence-based and what is anecdotal. And so there are things that you are more than welcome to try, of course, right? But there are some things that I focus on when I'm talking with my parents in my center, or providing them support. It's very significant for me to say, hey, this is evidence-based, go ahead and try this. This is anecdotal, or this is not evidence-based. It's really up to you. You may or may not get results, right? So kids that may have a hyposensitivity and may not have the same kind of reaction to feelings and touch that we may have, want pressure, may want some kind of tight hug, or a weighted blanket. So this is what I was talking about earlier with this weighted blanket idea, right? That yes, it is nice, and it's really, kind of a fad thing. People enjoy it, but it is not evidence-based. there is no real evidence that would suggest that weighted blankets necessarily will do a whole lot to better support a child's need for touch, or need to increase that. However, that being said, I do have a better sleep when I put on my weighted blanket. So that's more of my personal side of things, right? That is a very anecdotal statement for me to make, just like it could be for you guys. When we go to the questions and answers, and maybe someone brings that up and says, "Well, I used a weighted blanket and it worked," and so everyone else should. I wouldn't necessarily say everyone else should, right? It may have worked for you, and that's phenomenal. I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that we're just here to try and help out our children. But what's significant is to allow people to make their own decisions and to understand that some things are evidence-based, which means that they have gone through a peer review, that they've gone through studies in science journals, psychological journals, and some things may just not be there yet. Even equine therapy, which is the therapy with horses and horseback riding, it's getting close to being evidence-based, but not necessarily there yet, because there hasn't been enough necessarily of journals that have been done in order to complete this. Same thing with weighted blankets. And you may hear also about weighted vests as well. Same concept. It's also recommended sometimes by occupational therapists and physical therapists, and they have a different way of viewing interventions, which is fine. It's just significant for my scope of practice to mention that as well. So other things that you can do in hyposensitivity, right, is to better determine like textured toys, getting them something that can provide them with that feeling that they are missing, or even having something to protect their head when something gets dangerous. So unfortunately with touch, there's this possibility that they may bang their head on walls, cement, flooring, whatever it may be. And so it's important to keep them safe because they may not realize that it's very dangerous. And I had a child that did just that, is that he would come into our center every day and bang his head on the cement. And so we had to eventually prevent it with a head protection. And so that's something that you can do as well, right? Is to look at, again, what can be very beneficial to better support the children in this time. So we also have touch as a hypersensitive thing. They may not like touch. They may not want to be a part of something like that. So if they're high in tactile, they may not like fingernails cut. They may not like hair cutting. They may have panic attacks. And so it's also what you can do in these situations is, again, work your way up to something that you're trying to accomplish. We're not going to go and ask somebody that's never run in their life to run from 1 mile to now run 10 miles, right? It takes time to work up to that. So the same concept here. Maybe you can't cut all the fingernails, or maybe you can't cut all of their hair, but maybe you can cut one fingernail before they're done. And that's great. That's a win. And so the next day, maybe you try 2 fingernails, and then 3, and then 4, and you keep going until you have all of the fingernails. Same concept we use for potty training, where we don't immediately take a child and put them in 2-hour potty training. What we'll do is maybe start them at 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And then as we continue to grow at that point, then we say, okay, what about 30 minutes? What about 40? It's this idea of working a child up to accomplishing a certain task that allows them to be comfortable in what they can and can't do, as well as allowing them to be as confident as they can be. Because again, that's something that we're looking for all our children, is just to be very confident. One that isn't necessarily known as one of our sensations in our body, right, but is so significant, is balance, is that they may have this enjoyment in wanting movement. They may want to spin and not get dizzy, or they may have fun jumping up and down and not get tired, right? Things that we can do to better support them is, one, if it's not hurting anybody, and if it's not interrupting something that needs to be completed or a task that you're asking them to do, this day and age now, especially with my own neurodiversity, is to say that then why do we need to stop it, right? If they're a child and they're having fun just spinning around and having a good time, then that's no place of mine to say to stop it. Whereas if I was saying, hey, buddy, let's go ahead and clean the dishes, and all they were doing is running around in circles, those are 2 different things. Those are different aspects that we need to consider when we're working with our children to determine, is this really hurting anybody, or is it just bothering me? And if you answer that it's just bothering you, then we have to again look at, well, is it socially appropriate? And you're like, yeah, I've seen other people his age do it, then that's fine. It's just really significant that we don't try and take away the child's personality or the child's ability of seeing their way of life to really support what their needs need to be, right? And it's again, the opposite of this is also true. Whereas a behavior analyst myself, I may have certain preferences or certain personal beliefs that I believe in that I think that my specific child should have to follow. However, that to say, some parents may not think that. An example of this is also going to be um, me saying, hey, we're going to work on sitting because your child's not able to sit that long at the table. And the family comes to me next and says, actually, that doesn't matter to us. We sit on the ground when we eat, or we sit on the ground when we're together. And so now at this point, I have to check my beliefs at the door, and I need to say, hey, okay, sounds good. We're going to work on that instead. So that happened with me today, where my child that I was working with, um, his parents had said that they wanted him not to watch television while he was eating. And for me personally, I don't mind if I watch television while I eat, but they did, right? So again, that personal belief needs to be checked at the door and just say, hey, I'm going to focus on this, right? So as you're working with your own child and as you're working with us, keep that in mind, right? What matters to your family? Is it socially appropriate? And is it hurting anybody if your child is doing certain things like wanting to run around or rock backwards, right? Just as long as they are going to have some kind of social appropriateness, I think personally, again, as a behavior analyst, I would be okay. But every BCBA, every behavior analyst is going to be different. We get into the hypersensitivity. Maybe they have motion sickness. Maybe they don't like traveling in cars that long, or maybe they don't want to do any kind of spinning at all. And that's fine too. I would really recommend at that point to focus on the communication aspect to better determine what needs to occur and what they really need. The biggest thing that we can do, especially in this idea of sensory processing disorder, is to try and better promote this concept of like, you can tell me how you feel. You can tell me what you want, because I guarantee also a lot of the times, no one's really asked them that. And even if they are nonverbal, or they may be, maybe lower independent on that scale, right? We can still ask for their wants and needs by providing them those prompts of like, hey, you can say you're all done with something. You can say that you need help. You can say and assist them in situations that they do need help. They're just not saying it, right? So another example of this is going to be body awareness of having this hyper kind of thing. This hyposensitiveness that they may have is they may be unaware of their body sensations. They may not feel hunger. They may be too close to something and not really understand why they can't be that close. An example of this is why it's very concerning to have children with autism maybe near balconies or maybe near stairwells, because they think they have more space than they do. And then hopefully not that this doesn't happen for anyone at all, but they may tip over that railing, and it could be very dangerous for them. And so it's very significant to understand whether or not your child has a hypersensitivity or hyposensitivity, because it helps them complete this idea of, hey, this is how I need to live my life. This is how I need to better accomplish what is happening in my home to better support myself, right? So use corner protectors so that way your child doesn't fall or that they hit sharp edges. Or you could also set timers for body sensations. So there could be a timer for mealtime so they know when they need to eat. So that way they start equating, rather than focusing on, hey, I'm hungry, so I guess that means I need to eat. Then they start focusing on, oh, the timer went off. And when I know when the timer goes off, that means it's time for me to eat. And it helps them understand the expectations of the day. But they just may need a little bit more help to understand what the expectation is. So then we get into that hypersensitivity aspect, right? Maybe things are just a bit too much for them, but you can assist this with this plane of games or activities that can build up these fine motor skills. If they have a struggle with painting, they have a struggle with sand, they have a struggle with all types of ways of using their fingers or their bodies, the best way we can do to support this, is to work on desensitization, where we do every day something with fingerprinting. We do every day something with body movements or what have you, right? Focusing on certain aspects of like that is going to better support the child in their need to determine like what is going on, right? And there may be some parents here, there may be some parents out in the world that say like, hey, if my child doesn't want a fingerprint, they shouldn't have to do it. That's their choice. Totally get it. Totally cool with it. That's why I stay out of things, right? That is a family decision for your child, not the fingerprint or finger paint or touch sand or anything. That's up to you guys as a family. Maybe you don't go to the beaches. Maybe you don't do things like that. I'm here to just say, hey, if you want me to work on it, I can, and that's fine. But it's also, I would bring up at that point then, is your child never going to be able to be around sand? And if they're not going to be around sand ever, then that's fine. But typically they would be, right? So it's significant that they start to learn how to accept it. Otherwise, they may miss pivotal moments in their life. I live in Texas and we have a coastal area. And so if my child didn't like to touch sand or had a sensory issue with that, and I did try and work them through it and let them know it's not as scary as it seems, they may never see a beach or they may never be able to go into the water, and then they may never know that they actually like the water and they know how to swim now. So it's very significant for you guys to consider what is just an aversion and what is like absolutely like I can never touch this thing, and more so like a fear, if you will. And we keep going through all of these senses, right? And they're all going to be doing different things. So we've gone through, the smell and the taste, and now we get into the sound system where we discuss this hyposensitivity. And you know what? And this has always been very interesting to me. And I think the times are starting to change, but it used to be a lot of the times that children with this kind of sensitivity, the ones that this is hypo, but I'm on hyper, but it's okay. It's relatively the same thing, where it's having this sensitivity is putting these headphones on, where it was just these big headphones. Everybody could tell, like, oh, there's something very difficult that is happening in this moment with this individual, and so these are good moments for you guys as parents to better understand. Hey, I can, rather than teaching about the noise canceling headphones, which are fine, right? They're able to better support the children in those moments, but we want to try and make it as socially appropriate as possible, is to tell the child at this point, or to teach them, like, hey, you can say, I need a break when this gets too loud, or you can say, I need a moment, or hey, come here, or all done, when things are getting to be overwhelming for that child, because it's a lot more significant for a child to be able to say their wants and needs or their fears or their worries, rather than just accepting, hey, these are headphones, I'm not really getting a lot out of this anyway. And so it's, again, every BCBA is going to be different. Maybe there's a BCBA here right now in the chat. I'll see you at the end. That's like, hey, I don't really agree with that. Totally cool too, right? It's really, again, up to our family perspective. It's just my focus, especially as a neurodiverse individual and one with autism, is that I want to focus on what is socially appropriate, what is going to allow your child to still be successful in life, but also be able to support themselves and understand how to really advocate for their needs when things are not going their way. Because there may be one day in a rush, you forget the headphones. And then what are you guys going to do at that point, right? And it's so significant that to make the child as common as we can, or at least provide them with enough independence where they can state their wants and needs. So that way we don't get in a situation that causes a big tantrum when they start to realize, oh, I need to use my words and I never have to make a tantrum again, right? So on the opposite side is going to be that hyposensitivity that we were talking about. I think I skipped through the tips, so I'm just going to put that out there in case anybody was wanting them. But visual aids can be very good if they're not able to understand what you're being said, right? Sometimes as therapists, we maybe talk too much to the child and they're like, oh, I don't want to do this, or I'm all done, right? And we're like, oh, but we can do this first and this is fine. This is why we're doing this. But you already lost them at like the first sentence or so. So putting it in very plain language through visual aids could be very helpful. I had a child that he wanted a hot dog from us and we ignored him because he was doing it for attention. And so when we went out to his living room, his mom was there and he asked her for the hot dog, knowing that we had said no, but knowing that mom would have said yes. And so she said yes because she had no idea what was going on. And then I stepped in and I was like, no, that's unavailable right now because we're in the middle of therapy. And there was that miscommunication between I said no and mom said yes. So this child is very blatantly upset. And so I told the therapist as well, I was like, look, I don't blame the child. I don't blame mom. It was clearly just a miscommunication. But again, this is where that sound comes from, right? Is the child is going to hear one thing, or the child is going to think one thing. And it's significant for us to really relay, whether through visuals or not, what our real intentions are. I hope this is very helpful for you guys as we continue on, right? So one thing that you guys may have heard of is going to be sensory overload. So it's where people experiences processing sensory disorder, where there's just too many things going on at one time. And so during my situation in Arkansas, I told my wife, hey, I need a break real quick. And I ran outside, I took my breather, and I walked around, and it was a lot better at the end of it, right? It didn't end my day. It just ended that moment because I needed to step away. But if I didn't get to step away, it could have ended the day. And that would have been really rough, right? So it's noticing the signs in your child to understand what does it look like when they fidget, or what does it look like when they are getting upset. They don't want to be here, all of these things. And focusing in that moment, oh, this is a good time to help my child start to speak. This is a good time to help my child better accept what is happening around him by saying, hey, you can tell me you need a break, or hey, you can say, like, you need to go, and those kind of things. That is going to be very helpful for them, right? So think of sensory overload as similar to what happens to a computer when you ask it to do too many tasks. It freezes up. It asks, for the process, more tasks are only going to make it worse. And so if they are in this tantrum, this meltdown, whatever you want to call it, and then you have them ask things, that's not going to be a good point, right? You're going to start talking to them only when you start seeing them either fidgety, or that this is going to be a big scene for them, right? So you immediately can tell them, like, hey, you can tell me when you're all done. You can say, let's go. Excuse me, it's later on my side. Or you can say, let's go, to better understand what the expectation is, right? So examples of sensory overload. I don't know if this is going to show. I don't think it is. I have to stop sharing to show it. So give me a second, you guys. Or maybe it is showing. I don't think it is. We're going to do it anyway. So I hope this is very helpful for you guys. It looks like Google Chrome is opening it. Let me see. Yep, it is. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is a sensory overload idea. And you know what? I'm not really a big fan of these usually, but we'll see how this is. And I'll give you guys an idea of if this actually helps or not, if this is how I experience it. So let's go.
We were fortunate enough to be able to find an app that would help to demonstrate to our staff what it feels to have sensory overload in a public space. Now that app is a MenCap app actually, and it's designed to show what it's like if you are on the autistic spectrum and you have a sensory overload issue in a public space.
My heart's racing. It is still racing now. Too loud, your vision's going, it's confusing. And obviously with the sounds of the heart beating, actually my heart was beating because I can imagine being in that situation, really scary.
Just keep breathing, calming down. Okay. Everything's fine now. Yeah?
That's pretty neat. I haven't seen that video before, so that was really interesting to me. All right, so let me go back to our tab with the presentation. Give me a second, you guys. Hope that was helpful, though. I'll go into a little bit more detail when I get back to this. Right, so looks like I'm in presentation. No, now I am. Cool. Yeah, so with that, right, like, I don't know. I've seen some of those, and like I said, I'm diagnosed with autism, right? And I feel like I would be a good speaker for how those videos usually are. I wouldn't necessarily, at least for me personally, because everyone's going to be different, that the view of the bright flashing lights, like it's lights on and off, or really bright or dull, doesn't happen for me necessarily. More so, the heart racing does. I will say that the heavy breathing does. Like I can't breathe because my heart is racing so much. It's maybe resemble it more of like a panic attack kind of thing, right? When it's just too much is happening. There's people talking to me, there's people touching me, there's people, there's a lot of things I'm not used to, there's like crowds. And so that's when I'm like, I gotta get out of here, right? And it's just then my heart starts to slow down and it's fine. I don't have that many situations as I used to anymore. Mostly because I look up websites if I'm going somewhere. So like, for instance, like I'm going, I don't know, to the zoo with my wife or something, right? Like I'll look up pictures of that specific zoo. I'll look up pictures of the map. And thank goodness for, technology nowadays. It shows electronic tours of these places so I can get more familiar and more accustomed to it. But even if I go to somewhere new and I don't know the menu to a restaurant, right? That's very intimidating for me. And so I may rely more on like letting my wife choose her dinner first, so I have a little bit more time to decide, or to look up the menu before we actually go, things like that. So the heart racing, the anxiety of it, the heavy breathing, I would say like that's pretty on par, at least for me. I wouldn't necessarily say the sounds are amplified or the lights are amplified for me. It's more for me, I guess, is more of the touching or the hearing aspect of like just too many questions or too many people asking me things that are very simple to respond to, but just not for me in that moment. So some things to prevent that sensory overload, right, is going to be to better understand what that looks like for your child specifically. Much like I said earlier, right? Every sensory overload is not going to be the same for every single person. It could be completely different for me or a child or a teenager or an adult, another person, whatever. What matters is, do you know how your child is typically going to respond to certain aspects or certain questions, or certain settings that may cause this to arise? So, like I said, it may look like a panic attack, this getting hyper, shutting down, or having a meltdown, which resembles a tantrum, but it's really not. It's just this is too much for that child to handle. So I really like the fact that we mentioned that it's a panic attack, because that's very much how it feels. It's just there's too much to go on, and I don't know how to necessarily maintain what needs to be accomplished, in order to do that, right? So some questions to ask yourself is, does a person's mood usually change when overwhelmed? And if so, how is that, right? And then you can focus on more calming type behavior, self-calming, self-soothing, how to better support that child in their time of need. Maybe you just need to leave them alone. Maybe you need to give them a hug, right? It's going to be very dependent on what matters to your child. And in order to do that, it's really going to be getting to know them and getting to know what the expectations are. So again, this is another sensory overload that we'll go ahead and pull up for you guys so that way you can see it. Because although yes, it may be, not quite what I would say, and again, but everyone's going to be different. So even though it may not seem good for me, it may be good for one of your children. So I'll go ahead and bring that up as well. Let's see. Oh, hold on just a second, you guys. I don't know why I did that. Let me share that screen again. I don't know. That was weird. There we go. Wow, that was pretty cool. I like that. That's nice. Let's see. No. Oh, can you guys not hear the video? I'm sorry. Oh man, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Okay, I'll try and see. The links will also be on here too. So if you guys are wanting to, oh man, no, this is silly. Oh, hold on. All right, sorry about that, you guys. That's silly. Okay, well, yeah, let me share the link for you guys. Let me see if I can do that real fast. Because yeah, no, this was really nice. Give me a second. I'm gonna escape it and then be able to get it over to y'all. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it though. That's really cool. So this is the link of the video I had just shown you guys. Maybe I have to share my audio too. I didn't think I had to. But that's unfortunate. Oh, you know what? I do need to share my audio because it's not on the same link. That's why. Okay. Thanks you guys for sharing that. But that's the one I just showed. So let me go ahead and share my screen again with the presentation. Here we go, and slideshow. Okay, so that was it, right? So one thing about this is going to be that the aspects of like this is just too much for them to handle, right? But you will notice some things that the child stayed in one place where all of these sounds are happening for some of this video, right? And so that is a good indication though for you guys to understand like, hey, then maybe I need to spend this time to start teaching my child how to tell me this is too much for me or this is too loud for me. Things like that that can better support them. And then that way they have a partner, somebody that can support them and know that they are trying their best to communicate their wants and needs to then better support them as well, right? So sensory processing disorder is a nebulous condition which manifests in many diverse ways. So you can track your child's signs and also speak about this with your doctor, right? So any kind of symptoms that you were worried about or that you're concerned about, make sure you track a time and date that you notice it, and then bring it to your doctor and see what they think about this, right? Any kind of documentation is always going to be better than no documentation. So taking any kind of notes about your child's behavior, writing down what's happening. You may, some parents reported thinking their children's tantrums were random and impulsive, but upon tracking, they saw more closely that the tantrums actually occurred every time the child had to put on footwear or heard about it, right? And that happens a lot of the times with the parents I'm seeing is that they say like, oh, my child has been hitting his sister a million times or whatever, right? And they say that. And so I start tracking it. It's like, oh, actually, he only hit his sister 3 times today or 2 times today, right? And it's data and documentation is going to be so significant for you guys to really see how to better support them, right? So reducing sensory stimuli is going to be very much like visual stimuli, right? So reducing that visual stimulation of this person experiencing the visual overload may just be wearing sunglasses, or it may be having curtains up, right? To help with this visual stimulation, you can reduce the items that are hanging on the wall, removing anything from a certain desk. So like, for instance, if I'm working with a child doing a teacher time aspect, I may remove everything from their desk. So that way they have nothing else to focus on but me. And it takes over this idea of being overwhelmed from what is happening around them to better support them. So if the lighting begins to overwhelm them, maybe use a lamp instead of the fluorescent lighting. And so maybe use less bright bulbs or some kind of blackout curtain to try and minimize that amount of time, right? If indoor lights are overwhelming, use sunshades, right? There's different ways that we can do that. So reducing the sensory stimuli, and this is very similar to like what we talk about of hyposensitivity and hypersensitivity. Look at your child's needs and determine what is a true and realistic expectation for them. Do they have to wear long sleeve shirts? No. Is that something that you want to focus on? Up to the family, right? Do they have to wear shirts? Yes. Does that mean because they don't want to, that means that they can just never wear a shirt for the rest of their life? No. And so therefore you need to spend some time to try and teach them to be accustomed to certain fabrics, certain clothing, things like that to better support them. Because that's the only way that they would be able to become more socially appropriate. And so that's what I'm trying to lead at here, right? Is how do we get them to be encouraged enough to wear comfortable clothing and no longer consider some things itchy or painful and know that this is just how things need to be done, but only for X amounts of time. There's sometimes when I'm at home and I may want to take off my long sleeve dress shirts, right? Because I don't want to wear them all day and all night. But I know in certain aspects, certain business avenues, I have to, right? And when I get home, I don't have to. So it's important to maybe set aside those rules for them. Same thing with auditory stimuli. Maybe we start focusing on starting with low volume or no volume and just try the headphones, and then put a little music in the headphones and see how they respond, and a little more and a little more, right? Just something to get them more accustomed to the noises that are around them. You can shut any kind of open doors or windows when they're saying it. I had a child that would had a brother in the center, and he would scream and cry, and so sister would say it's too loud. And so what we would do then at this point was, rather than just shut the door, well, we did shut the door for her. That was it. But then we made it a little bit more challenging for her, and we said, okay, well, what do you want to do about that? And she told us, shut the door. So that way, I provided her more self-advocacy, more independence to manage her own feelings, rather than just getting upset and then starting to show more self-injurious behavior, which was one of the problems that she had. Same thing with the olfactory stimuli, right? Is avoid overdoing nice smells. You don't need 1,000,001 candles, although I mean, I may get into some fights with you guys in the comments if I say you don't need 1,000,001 candles. Maybe you do. I know my wife thinks that. But it's significant, right, to not try and overpower a room with certain smells, because the children may have an adverse reaction to it, and may not be comfortable with that. So it's important to take the child's opinion or the child's into consideration, depending on the smell. Same thing with the opposite way, right? So limit the strong smells, or add more smells if they are hyposensitive, right? So it's just like significant to do that. I like that the comments, I don't know what they're saying, but I like that the comments went up when I said that you don't need 1,000,001 candles. So I hope that's not what it was about, but we'll see. So the vestibular stimuli, how to reduce this is going to be that sensory input, right? So if a person who's experiencing sensory overload, they may be sensitive to balance or movement. So some things that we can do is just, maybe be a balancing act for them, holding their hand or letting them hold on to their shoulder, taking a break every now and then so they can get more accustomed to the area around them. You can try slowing down or be able to practice movements or practice running, things like that in a safe environment before you actually go to a more inclined dangerous environment, to allow them to better understand what is the expectation, right? And so then strategies just to address the sensory sensitivities, trying some kind of sensory diet, which would be, again, just a way for a person's nervous system to feel organized and efficient, giving them certain aspects, certain toys that they may really appreciate. I give my children that I work with stress balls, or the poppets that you see on the bottom left of this picture here, right? Or the little singing tubes that you can make whistle sounds with, right? It just helps them feel like they're able to do better and do more. My thing has always been fidgets. So I use, usually when I'm talking on these things, I use like a pen or something. That's just my own personal thing where I need a fidget because of how I feel inside. And so this helps. So it's about, again, I think I've said it, a couple of times now, really get to know your child. What is going to make them feel the most comfortable? And that's what you can really take away from this, right? Is understanding what can be done for them, what can be done to better support these children in their times of need or distress, and how we can really better support what we're trying to accomplish with them. Strategies to address the sensory sensitivity. I said this earlier, and we see it here as the silicone chewy, right? I don't personally like this one because it looks like it's just like some kind of yo-yo, and that's not socially appropriate. But if you go on Amazon and you put on like sensory chewy autism, they have like ones that are necklaces that look like things that a child would actually wear. So they have like a shark tooth, or like a dog tag for the military, or like a little hook like Moana has, like the from him. Now, man, now I can't think of what his name is. It's not Moana. What is his name? If anyone knows in the comments, bonus points for you. So please let me know. It's going to kick. I know The Rock plays him. I just don't know what it is, but that's, besides the point. But yeah, so look up for different kinds of toys that can really benefit them and really help them. So I have a child that mouths everything. He just puts everything to his mouth, a toy, things that he shouldn't, right? That's very near the pica stage. And so to help him, we give him a chewy, and now that's what he focuses on rather than putting everything near his mouth. And so that took away this sensory need and allowed him to get what he's wanting out of it, right? So these are really good too. These are apps with haptic responses. So Tappy is a fidgeting app designed to help reduce stress and anxiety. So you can just tap, tap, tap away. Even you don't need to be, have autism to think that this is a good idea. By all means, go for it. I use bubble wrap, or I mess around with the poppets. When I'm talking with my staff, I'm also doing like, tap, 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 all this kind of stuff. Anti-stress. So it was a relaxing game, and choose one of the fidget toys to relax play. There was one also, a game, it was called like Amoeba or something, and you just were an amoeba eating other amoebas, but they played like ASMR, like sound music while you did it. And that was a really good game too. I think it's like $5, but it was a good game. And for older kids, because again, this may seem like more like younger kids, which is fine. But some of you have teenagers, and I don't want to not address that. So like that was a really cool game. And it's really just about like what is it going to do for your child, and they may not even know it, right? What they may like, what they may not like. I've recently been into ASMR, and I listen to that before I go to sleep, and then that's helped me go to sleep, and it's great. So something to look into. So strategies to address the sensory sensitivities, like prepare a go kit, something that can be good to go, like having the favorite chips or a toy or something that and you may not want to immediately rely on that, because it's not again about, well, this is my life or this is his life. He's always going to need these things, right? What should be a real focus for you guys is to determine what is most appropriate for them, or what is necessarily going to provide them with the most ability to be independent, and using that to their advantage, because they may not need these things. And if they can go a whole day without something, that's great. But it also shows you if they can go a day without their usual items, why do they need it at all, right? And try to support that idea to try and make them more independent so they can live those successful lives that we all want them to live. So a couple of things to keep in mind, right, is to intervene early. So sometimes a person may not realize that they're struggling, and it may be very tough to figure it out. One thing about behavioral science and what I do is that everything is learned, in the sense that, what we are doing takes time to learn and is a learned behavior. And so we start to accept things that are happening to us. So like I have driven on the right side of the road. Again, if other people here are foreign, or, in other areas, please let me know. But driven on the right side of the road, and I think that that is correct. But if I go to maybe the United Kingdom and they drive on the left, I may be a little bit more hard pressed to start that, because I've taken so long to learn something. And the same thing with these children is that the longer you take to start working with them on resolving some of their issues or some of their concerns, the harder it is to break that kind of habit or that behavior. So it's very significant to start as early as possible. So if you see something that you may not necessarily like, focus on that and try and better support them. Really be compassionate, understanding, right? It's understanding like, hey, like it's okay. My mother says, every day is a new day. And even if they mess up on Monday, it doesn't mean they're going to do it on Tuesday. Just accept, hey, this was a Monday and that's fine, right? And moving on to the next day and saying like, this is Tuesday, be who all you can be, support them. Again, if it was not for my family, I would not be where I am today. And I cannot stress that enough. I'm still working with them and, providing, I don't think I said this. In addition to me doing this, I own my own company. I do in-home ABA therapy in the Houston, Texas area. So if anyone is in Houston, be sure to message me about that. But yeah, it's important for you to just really support your child and be able to support everything you do. So avoid overreacting if they act out. If something happens that you may not necessarily like, it's significant for you to just say like, hey, like this happened. So even when I've been punched in the face, I've been hit, bit, kicked, you name it, I've had it happen to me. I'm still at a neutral tone. I'm still at this is walking with me, friend. This is how we hold, this is how you hold my hand. This is sitting down, friend. Things like that, rather than, oh, I can't believe you just hit me. Because that's not going to do anything. It's just going to cause more of a reaction with the child than what is currently being expected out of them, right? So same thing if the child is starting to yell and then you start to yell, then it becomes a bit of an issue, and it starts having the child understand like, hey, like if you're going to yell, I'm going to yell, and we're just going to keep yelling and yelling until one of us wins. And the child's going to think it's them, and you're going to think it's them, and then it's just continually fighting, right? So provide some kind of exit. I would recommend like having them, use their language or gesturing or signs or what have you, be by a door. So that way, if there is a situation that requires them to have a break rather than having to go through a crowd, you know how to get them to the exit safely, so that way they can have their moment, and then that way you can go back easily as well, right? Ask before touching them. I do that not just with, you know, the therapist I work with, if I'm trying to model something with them or role play something, but I'm also doing it with the kids. I'm saying like, hey, can I have a hug before I actually hug them? Hey, can I shake you? And by shake, I don't mean like, oh, like it's shaking their arms, just so everyone's, you know, clear on that. And you know, giving their permission is such a big thing because it allows them to know that their opinion matters or what they do matter. So that's very significant for them, right? Asking simple yes no questions are going to allow them to know what is the expectation. Leaving things open ended can be very difficult and confusing, and really cause them to get very frustrated, right? It's a lot going into the pantry, and I've said this to a couple of you guys in previous sessions that I do, that if you go into the pantry and you say like, hey, you know, eat, you know, pick out a food, there's so a million one options that they're not going to know what to pick. But if you go, hey, do you want Cheerios or Frosted Flakes? That's a much easier way of communicating what they want rather than having to deal with choosing something, right? So alternating noisy and quiet areas, or having gradually increases exposure and proximity, are things that we have already discussed here. Things that I have mentioned, that you want to start off small, you want to start off slow before you get into these bigger areas or these bigger concerns that you have, right? Tinnitus retraining therapy is not auditory integration training. It has plenty of medical research to back up the results, and it listens to broadband pink noise, which contains all audible frequencies. So that's something to consider as well, right? So there's many different options that you can use to better support your child through these sensory sensitivities. It's just a matter of what is going to be best for you, right? Avoiding you're welcome to consider supplements, right? And again, I have to say this because of my own behavior analysis, right? Like supplements, yes, may be beneficial, but I highly recommend you speak to a medical doctor before you start looking at, just like it says here, consult with a physician, that you look at these nutritional supplements before you start seeing that, oh, my cousin's sister's aunt said that it cured her son's autism, right? There's a million one people out there that are going to say that they can cure autism, and that's not possible. Nor really, you know, at this point in my life will I say that it is true to do, because it's just a part of a person. It doesn't make them who they are, right? So I really think that it's very significant to focus on evidence-based strategies. But speaking with a doctor about supplements could be ideal. Avoiding food additives could be ideal. But again, all of these medical type of considerations, I would really recommend you speak to a doctor about. So this is just some additional resources to try and help with sensory overload. It's just significant for you to better understand, like, what can we do to better support the child, better support what is happening with them, right? So it's, as you continue to grow through this journey, look at what can be done. You're welcome to screenshot this page. I believe if you ask Michelle, she's more than happy to provide you with this list as well. But there's many different things that you can do for your child. It's just a matter of like, how can you just get them to their best self, whether that's independent or self-advocating, right? The choice is up to you guys. It's just a matter of how you get them there. So more importantly, though, I cannot say this enough to you guys: don't give up, right? It's not the be all end all. Michelle likes to say that, you know, parents come to her and tell her that the diagnosis of autism is like a cancer, that their life is over before they know it. And that's not true, right? So if you're having difficulties with the suggestions presented here, consult a BCBA or a licensed behavior analyst. Consult me, consult anyone that you trust that's a behavior analyst. I joined this program specifically because I believed in what Michelle was doing. She seeked me out, right? But I've just been so thankful to be a part of this, because the amount of parents that I've been able to help both domestically and internationally has just been phenomenal. And to meet with each and one of you guys and to learn about your stories is why I do what I do. And if it was not for my family, it wouldn't be where I am today. If it was not for each of you taking this step, I don't know where you guys are located. Some of you are with me and it's 9 p.m., it's 6 p.m., 7, you know, even later than that, maybe for some of you, right? And it's so cool that all of you are here to be a part of this, because it really speaks volumes to what you're willing to do for your child. And, you know, for that, I very much thank you for being here. So there are 3-step process of becoming a champion for your child. And they are to understand that your child's behavior is their communication. is that there is a reason why they are doing what they're doing. There's always a reason why someone is doing this, right? So in our program, there's a mindset coach to get you out of fight or flight and to better understand why these behaviors are occurring. You can learn why your children are causing these behaviors, which myself, as well as the other BCBAs, will help teach the why and how to solve it, as well as providing your children an acceptable way to get their needs met so they no longer engage in inappropriate behaviors, rather than focusing on, hey, why did you do this? I can't believe you hit me and all of this stuff. Understand that the child is creating these or is demonstrating these behaviors because that is their level of communication, that is their form of communication. And what you are doing now by taking this course is to understand how to effectively provide your child the communication they need in order to be successful, right? So I'm going to bring this down just so you can see it a little bit better. But rinse and repeat for all of these, right? Apply to 1 to 3 for all of the goals in order to better support your child. So what do you want from your child? You want to hear them speak. You want to have them go to the bathroom. You want them to not have a tantrum. There are 1,000,001 things that you are probably wanting your child to be able to do, right? You want to enjoy the holidays, the parties with family and friends without having to hover and explain away your child's behavior. There are so many things you want for your child, but the reason why you're here tonight is that you weren't able to really find ways, or you're looking for more ways to better support your child. And that's what we want to do, right? You have to consider what you want for yourself. You want that unbreakable connection to your child. You want peace with the diagnosis. You don't want to assume that the child is not going to be able to do anything and everything. You had all these dreams and hopes for them, and unfortunately, there's this belief that they can't do anything, and that's not true, right? Children with autism can do so many things, and as I said earlier, you may believe that autism is a death sentence. That's certainly not true. You don't want to feel in your bones that you didn't fail your child. You want to know that your children will remember their child and say, Mom and Dad gave me an amazing childhood. You live every day knowing that if you die tomorrow, you gave 110%. And again, I say, with each of you here this evening, you are you really showing again and again how much you care about your child. So from Champions for Our Children, it's been a while. It's been here for quite some time. And because of that, we've had so many great things happen for the children that we have seen. So for this parent, Teresa, she was able to have her child officially become potty trained through our program. It was absolutely phenomenal. This is a real email from one of the mothers that we worked with. And so she goes into great detail about everything that was happening with her child. It's just simply phenomenal, right? Of how she was able to do it, why she was able to do it, what happened. And it's just so incredible. Oh, good. And she signed, this is like recent. I didn't even know. Yeah. Oh, you know what, Teresa, that does sound familiar. Yeah, that's awesome. So she's just so happy that Stella and Michelle was able to help her. And then she signed up for my class. Woo woo. So, because I do these classes as well. So she signed up. I'm sure I talked to her at the time, January 24th. And so it's such a pleasure to be able to help parents with that. And that's what we do, right? So it's able to see what we can do and better support them. So watches videos of people opening, eating candy on YouTube. Got a huge 1-pound peanut butter cup for Christmas. That is giant. I love that. But it was a perfect reward for potty training. He was able to get potty trained. Every time he got a piece of that cup, every time he went to the potty, and he learned how to do it. It's simply incredible. And it's such a joy to see parents this happy. Just to hear a parent say that this program is, we put in place, is just so much fun and affordable that any of the treatments that she has paid for in the past. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that this is something that provides results guaranteed. It's a 3-month coaching program, group coaching program. You get lifetime access to the My Self Study Vault of courses that you can do on your own time. They include potty training, communication, stopping problem behavior, social skills, picky eater protocols, mindset training, stopping eloping, building out every month. There's more and more things that happen because these things that we are doing here are recorded. They are put on every single time to better support you guys. This collection of programs is what makes the program the Harvard of autism, as Michelle likes to put, right? There are mindset coaches, BCBAs, a nutritionist, speech therapist now. So a part of this, when you join, you get 3 to 4 weekly live group coaching calls and you learn from the experts. You have Michelle, who is the autism mom and the life coach here, the one that put it all together, this amazing, incredible person. You have Stella, who's the mindset coach, who helps keep your mindset in place where you stay determined to help your baby. And then you have us, the BCBAs. There I am. Woo. who learn how to get your child to the big three with the effective ABA strategies that you could do at home with them, right? Getting them to speak, getting them to eat, getting them to be potty trained. All of these things are things that we can cover and better support you and that we want to help support you with, right? Being able to just overcome the concerns that you have and the questions you have, that is what drives us to be here. So like I said, 3 to 4 weekly coaching calls. You also get monthly specialist calls with a registered dietitian. It's also an autism mom. And you get the speech language pathologist, who's also an autism mom. I actually worked with the speech language pathologist, Jessica. She was in one of these calls and she won the raffle, which we have at the end. If you guys stay, you get a free month of it, or a free class rather. Jen will give you more details. I was able to work with her and it was really cool. So now it's always awesome to see that, that worked out and she's able to be with us. So to continue, there's also a private Facebook community where you're able to ask as many questions as you like, be able to post. We talk on there. We want to help you. It's also, we get to email you. You can also email Michelle directly, because she wants to make sure that everything that you get from this is just 100% everything we can possibly do. And if Michelle can't help you, Stella will, I will, Stacy, really anybody is going to be here to help you guys out. And there was an action-back guarantee. So if after 90 days you don't get the results that you came for, you stay in the program until you do, or you'll get your money back, right? So if there is any concerns that you guys have, please address that and let us know how we can help you, because it's not about, oh, we just want to do this or that, right? It's all about how can we help you get your life back? How do we get your child that ability to be themselves and really be happy and be independent? So if you add on right now and you subscribe to Diet, you get a 4th month in the program instead of the typical 3. So there's a link in the chat that Jen is posting right now as we speak to book that call and more about the masterclass. And if you book tonight, again, 4 months instead of 3. That's always a great deal, especially because I get to see you guys for another month, which is always fun. And it's just such a joy when I do one meeting and then like the next week or a couple weeks when I do the next one, I see the same person again and I'm like, oh my gosh, so good to see you. And it's such a fun time. So please book a free call now. Again, that link is going to be in that chat box. Jen is posting away in there. And we would absolutely love to have all of you, right? So why Champions for Our Children? Well, one, it's unique, right? There is a nutritionist, a speech language pathologist, a mindset coach, a BCBA. It's not usually done. And I've been around for a while and I don't really see this, right? There are personalized strategies, individualized strategies. At the end of this, we're going to have a Q&A session. It's very individualized. You guys are going to be able to ask me as many questions as you have, and I'm going to answer it to the individualization of your own child, right? Feeling confident as a parent, like you were before the diagnosis, knowing that you can do this, because it's not just me saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do this with the child, I'm going to do this. It's also you doing it yourself. And yes, your child is 2, but what about 12? What about 22? My goal is to give you the skills you need to do this for the rest of your life, where you don't need people, watching you, helping you, right? You'll be able to go back in your file cabinet and know, I remember what Armando taught me. I'm going to use this. I'm very thankful I got to talk to him. And that's my goal when I do these kind of things, right? Let you reconnect to your child. It lets you have your life again. It lets you get back on track. And more importantly as well, it lets you learn from trial and error. You're not going to learn things immediately. You're not going to learn things right away. But if you try and you give up, that is the only true failure here, right? Is quitting. But if you try and you fall and you get back up and you try again, well, that just, again, it speaks volumes to who you are as a person, and it speaks volumes on everything that you can possibly do for your child. And that's what we want to do. Even if you fall, we want to be right next to you to pick you up and help you again, is to no longer have to worry about autism every minute and know that your independence is back to along with your child's. So if you're thinking things like, I don't know if now is a good time. Time for children on the spectrum is a currency. And I spoke about that earlier, that behaviors are learned. And every day that goes by is another day that child has learned that a tantrum is okay to do in a grocery store, that a punch to the face is okay to do. And it may be cute or fun with a little baby fist at 2 years old, but it's not going to be cute when they're doing it at 15 or 25, because eventually that turns into assault. And that's what we're trying to avoid here, right? We want to teach the child that there are better ways of communicating than aggression or self-injurious behavior. There's never going to be a perfect time. We help create that time and use the time that we have already to a more effective stance, right? And Latanya, again, I appreciate you raising your hand. Jen will be more than happy to answer. And when we're completed with the presentation, I'll be happy to answer as well. But you have some time now, right? If we could value time as much as we do money, it is a true expense that we can't afford to waste. It just goes by and again, right? So I want you to think about, if you could find 1 hour, how would you do it? What would you do with that time, right? When you find that hour, how could using it to work with us weekly give you more of that time back, right? Knowing what this is costing you and your family, can you spare another second and not get this done, right? So think about how often those tantrums are lasting, how long it takes to deal with a child that's getting upset with that sensory overload that we talked about. This is going to better support you in this time of need, right? So if you're thinking, can I afford to spend the money on this? Or this is expensive. It's also more valuable than anything to buy because you get your years back. You get peace knowing the future has possibility. A cost of diapers and wipes is over $2,000 per year. The cost of change, more than 135 hours annually. Cost of not being able to move on and teach other important life skills is invaluable. And to cost you to mentally and emotionally, this rite of passage from baby to child to never happen, it's incalculable. I had a parent, unfortunately, that had a 10-year-old still not potty trained, right? And the amount of diapers, I imagine, or the amount of time and effort and energy that is taken on them, the toll, and not just that, but also the mental toll of knowing that their friends and family that may have children as well have already gone past the potty training stage, and knowing that they haven't, that is such a very difficult thing to swallow. That is why we do what we do. We want to help move you past that situation and help support you in any way that we possibly can. So if you're thinking that you failed so many times, or I've tried everything, and how is this going to be different, right? Understand that Michelle's program is going to be the last place that you need to look, that it is where the key to unlocking an amazing future is, right? It's not that you haven't tried anything or how many times you've lost your keys and had to go hunt for them, right? So it's even if you have felt this need to just stop and not know where to go next, right? That has never stopped you before. That has always said, you have always said, let's keep going, let's keep moving. This is just another obstacle to overcome. This is just another hurdle to get through. And with this program, we're able to do that, right? We will work with you in more than one way, right? We have speech therapy, BCBAs, mindset coach, life coach. We will be here to make sure that this time is different and that we will do everything to help you not quit anything. So if you're thinking also, I need to think about it. It doesn't take time to make a decision. It takes information. And that's what these Q&As are here for as well. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have about your own child or what you can accomplish with this. It's the same reason, it's the reason some decisions feel solid or certain is because your brain gives us that feeling when we make a known decision from the past, which is giving you the result you have now, right? So if you take longer to respond or take longer to understand what's happening, that's more time that's gone by now that their child is starting to learn that tantrums are okay, right? So not taking action to help your baby now, again, remember, time is equal to currency. And it's a reason why you should join this program, because we will coach you through any kind of stuckness that you may have. Indecision is what costs you so much time. And if you can move past this indecision and know that through this program that your child will make progress, well, then we know that we can help you. So word on unicorn syndrome is that Juliana is different than my child. Juliana, again, is her daughter, Michelle's daughter. My child has severe autism. My child is broken and I'm broken. There's nothing out there that would change the trajectory for my child. Unicorn syndrome is a self-preservation state. If I stay here, I never put myself out there to have these hopes and dreams for my baby. And when does that happen? And I can't be hurt. But if you think that way, nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to overcome this feeling of woefulness or this idea that the child is not going to be able to accomplish certain aspects. But through this program, we can definitely help you with that. We can definitely work through your concerns, right? So sitting in I don't know or asking dumb questions with no answers keep you stuck and not taking action to help your baby. The indecision is keeping you keeping you second guessing and losing this precious time. So nothing comes from I don't know. And it's important to move that and just decide. Decide you're not ready and won't do the work, or decide you're nervous. Take a leap of faith and go for it. Give yourself that gift of decision and honor yourself and your child. Join us and know that we will do everything in our power to help support you. We will do everything we can with our knowledge to better provide you the wants and needs that you have, and really just overcome a huge obstacle for yourself. Saying yes will have you and your baby moving forward today. So again, Jen is posting that link for a free call. It's in the chat box right now. You sign up tonight, you get a 4th month when typically you would only get a 3rd month. So please go ahead and sign up, and we would love to hear from you. And right now I'm going to just show, oh goodness, I'm going to show a video of a couple of our parents and what they thought. And I'll be right back.
What were your biggest struggles prior to joining the program?
You know, I was going around and looking for organizations. I was looking for help.
So I started looking up online. And I really need somebody who's been through.
There's no access to any kind of services over here in Ireland. Googling stuff and trying to find something.
I joined because I have a 3-year-old autistic son. So I knew I had to do something that I didn't know what to do.
Everything seemed to be waitlisted or just not available. To break it down to him, I had to have somebody break it down to me.
And that really got me worried. It got my husband worried and thinking, okay, we need to stick their PD.
I think my biggest struggle was understanding their potential.
I actually didn't know. Like, I was kind of relying on just the speech therapist.
I came in just feeling very helpless, very confused.
What can I do now that I haven't already done? You know, what would be the harm? What can I lose?
Before participating, we weren't making as much progress. It was slow progress.
I believe that I found you on Instagram.
She is very turned off by a lot of doctors and therapists and things.
I went back and forth, and I'm like, she's going to start ABA therapy on this day, and I told him that was my #1 goal.
As everyone would be, I was a little skeptical because of how many times I have tried with Alexander.
On one end, I'm hearing, okay, she's, artistic, and, you qualify for a lot of services. And when I go and try to inquire about, we can't service her.
All right, so now, I guess, where are you now? You and your child, now that you've joined the program?
They're doing really, really well. Doing really, really well. I think their ABA program here is wonderful. We got very lucky with that. One word here or there, what it was that he wanted, but not necessarily saying I want it would be apple or this or that. And that has totally blossomed. And now following like what the BCBA said, which is starting really small.
Okay, so where I am now is where I kind of know that I'm in charge.
The changes in him in less than 2 months, I think I've been like 6 weeks, are miraculous. The behaviors are decreased. The stimming has decreased. The listening to directions has increased. The language has increased.
I just, set those goals for myself and cross them off and once I did that for me, turn my focus 100% and then I was able to get the work done.
You helped me formulate the confidence in myself to realize I'm ready to really go for it. I would not have gotten through it. It went so much better than I ever could have imagined.
I started listening to the tips from Michelle. He's doing so much better. More eye contact for sure. We're working on talking, on saying some words.
Yeah, it went really well. Like the tips you guys gave me.
It doesn't seem like this big impossible thing.
I just been given something so precious.
He's more verbal, right direction, and I'm so happy to be part of this group. We never in a million years thought that it would happen this early.
He's making a lot more sounds. He's now at that point where he's no longer frustrated since you and all of the teachers have given me all of the ideas and the strategies.
We all want our children to succeed, and it's just been wonderful.
Would you recommend our program to any moms or dads that are going through this right now?
Absolutely. So yeah, I would definitely refer anyone to this.
Yes, definitely. You guys need to do this program. It'll change you guys and your child's life
tremendously.
100%. I do recommend that you learn something new.
I would definitely suggest to go through this program for at least first 4 to 6 months.
This program has allowed that.
Take this course, you know, do the one-on-ones, listen and absorb everything that this team has.
You guys have a gift. It's in your sharing it, and that's amazing.
So I will recommend you to anybody, whoever is out there.
It's been really great. It's been really great. And
This is going to help you. You can learn through other parents' experiences.
Just do it. Don't hold back. Just go all in, daughter or your son, and I promise you will definitely see results.
Okay, I'm gonna, yeah. I hope that went through for you guys. So this is the Q&A time, which I'm very excited about because this also means I can stop sharing and I can see all of you guys amazing people. But yes, so this is the Q&A time. Jen, do we do any raffles right now, or is this still just Q&A?
After Q&A.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Jen is here to keep me on track and make sure I'm not messing around. So I appreciate you, Jen. So yeah, so with that being said, if you guys have questions about anything, I am more than happy to answer. You can either chat it, you can raise your hand. I will be calling on people that are raising hands because there's a lot of you guys. But I am happy to respond to you guys from there. And again, you can ask about my life. I'm very transparent about it as well. I am diagnosed autistic. I was diagnosed at 3. I was nonverbal. Eventually began speaking. I'm sure my mom says that I cannot shut up, but here I am now. And if you guys would like to follow me, I'm just going to do a little shameless plug here. My Instagram is Autism International, Autism INTL. I'd love to have you guys on there just to learn more about what we can do for. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. So how do I get my 10-year-old to shower and brush his teeth on a daily basis? One thing I'll tell all of you guys as well is that everyone does everything they do for 4 reasons, including you and I. So it would be for either escape, they're trying to get out of something, attention, they want they just want your attention, tangible, they want something, or sensory, it feels good to them. So when that occurs, right, it's important to determine why is your child not showering or why are they not brushing their teeth. So for Haley, if you'd like to tell me more information, you're more than welcome to do so. I think you may need to raise your hand. I don't think I can just automatically make you a panel person. But it's significant to determine, is he doing it to get out of something or is he doing it because he wants attention, right? And once you figure that out, then you can move into, okay, what are my next steps here? How do I encourage more of that time for him to shower? How do I get him reinforcement? Ideally, probably something that needs to happen is give him some kind of reinforcer. So if he likes the iPad, then if he brushes his teeth, he gets to watch the iPad as he brushes his teeth. If he showers, he gets to watch the iPad, or maybe he only gets the iPad after he showers. It's really, again, up to you and the functionality. If you want to tell me more about it, Haley, I'll give you some time. If you just want to raise your hand, I'll make you a host and allow you to talk. But yeah, I'll give you like a minute or two because I know Lely wants to say something as well. Oh, Haley, good. Give me a second. Okay. You are allowed to talk, Haley. You just got to turn on your mic.
Okay, so he doesn't shower all the time. It's like every other week. I've also noticed like when we go to the dentist up here, he seems to have an issue with them wanting to clean his teeth or put the fluoride on his teeth. I know, he is a high functioning autistic child on top of ADHD and ADD. And we were just like wondering, how can we help him with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are 2 different areas, right? So we can focus on first, let's do the dentist part. So it sounds like a sensory aspect. So I'm glad you went on to your messages, right? So if it's more of a sensory thing where he does not like the feeling of the fluoride or he doesn't like the feeling of toothpaste, right? The way you can encourage it is determine what he likes the most. And let's say for argument's sake, he likes the iPad, right? So then you would deprive him of that iPad for the entire day. And you only allow him to have the iPad when he is able to brush his teeth successfully, whether that's and with toothpaste, because that's the point of it, not the toothbrush, just the toothpaste. So if he's able to brush his teeth with toothpaste, then he can have the iPad. And it starts to teach him to be more accepting of something to touch his teeth sensory wise, and thereby be more accepting of the fluoride once he gets to that point, right? It's just a matter of how do you do the same sensation that he currently has with toothpaste. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so then we move on to your shower aspect, right? Because we need to shower more than just every other week. So with that, then your next step is to determine what about the shower does he not enjoy? Does he not enjoy the shampoo? Like, does he freak out when the water turns on, when there's shampoo, when there's soap? What part is not good for him?
He don't like the shower touching his face or his head.
Okay. Okay, so that's a good part. So it's not the shampoo or anything, it's simply the water?
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, then same concept that we just used, except you're going to put water on him outside of the shower, so you have more opportunities. Okay. So you could try this outside, so because it may get a little wet, right? So you can try it outside where he can get a little wet and it's fine. Where you just get like a rag that's like wet, and then you put it on his hair. And if he's okay with it, then he gets a hug, or he gets iPad, or he gets a high five. Something to let him know that it's a good thing that he got his hair wet. And then once you're done with the hair, then you do the face and see. I wouldn't do all of it face and hair. I would do one at a time. So that way you don't overwhelm him. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, very good. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. It helps. It helps us a lot, most definitely.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. So, and then once you've done it outside, or you think that he's got more of an understanding of it, then you can try and do the shower. I would recommend either bath at first, because you can put him in a bath and then put water over his head. Or you could do a shower and do one of those like handheld shower things, because that gives you more control than just the shower head. Does that make sense?
That does. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is what I do at Michelle thinks. So if you guys like what you hear, book that call so you can do more of it. So thank you so much, Haley. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, I guess. Not remove. I don't want to remove you, Haley. I just want to lower your hand. There you go. So Aleli, I'm going to allow you to talk. How can I help you?
Yes, hi Armando.
Hi.
I have a question. My daughter I just got diagnosed her with autism. She's only 24 months. And how did I start helping her with language? Because she only babbles like ba 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 ta ta ta.
Okay. Yeah.
That.
So language is very significant in the sense that we go from nothing to babbling to repeating words to then working on now requesting items and things like that, right? So number one, I'm going to recommend that you speak to her continuously, right? Because it's shown through studies that the more language that is being surrounded by the child, the more they're going to start picking up, and the more they're going to start to learn the words that are being said around them, okay? So there's this cute little video of this dad talking to his son, and some of you guys may see it, some of you may not. I saw it on TikTok originally, but it was a dad talking to his baby, and the baby's trying to like not mock him, repeat what he's saying, right? And so that same concept there is what you guys can use to just understand, like, your child is picking up everything you're saying. It's just a matter of them understanding it, right? So when you're working on language as well, for you specifically, because your child was just diagnosed with the autism as well, is to better determine, okay, are they pushing and pulling me? Are they using words? Are they able to use sign language? And if they're able to do so, then great, you need to pick somewhere to start. So are you okay with her pushing and pulling you to tell you what she wants? Or do you want her to do sign language while you're waiting for her to speak? Because she can speak, it seems, with the babbling, but she needs some support. And the way you do that is by providing her with more language and also providing her with an opportunity to communicate her wants and needs. How does that sound?
Good. Also, though, I have to speak her more, but the speaking just small phrases, or just keep going on and on and on.
So when you're just like when you're just in her atmosphere or like her environment, you can just speak normally, like to your, whoever you're in the home with, right? But when you're speaking to her, you want to try and break it down. It's like, hey, you can say help, you can say more, like giving her those opportunities to understand the expectation. And you may need to take her hands and teach her how to do it, and then immediately give her the item. So, for instance, let's say this is a toy, right? And you be like, hey, you can tell me more. And then you're like, yeah, you do want more. Here you go. Or like, hey, you can say, my turn. Yeah, here you go. And then getting her hand and saying, my turn. So that way she can do that as well.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sound good? Yeah, very cool, very cool. All right. Thank you. I think it's just mute. Okay, and now Julie Teneo, how can I help you? I just allowed you to speak, so that should work.
Hi. So my son's 2 years old. He was diagnosed around 18 months. He's very good at communication. He doesn't speak, but he wants something, he goes for it, and he'll put it in my hands. But because he doesn't speak, I feel like that's leading a lot to the tantrums, and it's happening a lot lately. If he wants something, or if he knows what he wants and nobody understands him, he's very quick to just break down crying. Or if he doesn't get what he wants, he's starting to scream and throw himself on the floor to the point that his face is red. It's just kind of like, I'm not really sure how to approach that situation.
Yeah. So something to understand, and there's a lot of journals that talk about this, specifically with a man named Greg Hanley, if you're interested. So as communication goes up, behaviors go down. So for you specifically, with these behaviors that are starting to occur and are starting to get worse and worse, right? It's significant for you to first off understand, why are the behaviors happening in the first place? So with that being said, do you know why they're happening more, or when they are actually occurring?
Yes, most of the time I know it's because he wants something specific, or because like his cup, he wanted his cup, I gave him his cup, but his dad gave him juice earlier, and now there's water in the cup. So he throws the cup on the floor, and he just threw himself on the floor, crying, screaming.
So the idea behind that then, right, is that he's not able to understand how to appropriately demonstrate or provide his wants and needs in this situation, right? So the way that we handle that at that point then is to have him understand that this is not acceptable. This is not how you get juice back in your cup. So if that situation, he wants something, he wants the tangible, right? So one, we get him, if he's starting to get upset, we take away the juice and anything around his environment, because we see that he's going to throw it. And then he has a choice. And I tell my parents this a lot. He can either cry for the rest of his life, or he can move on and know that this is not going to be acceptable and this is not how I get my juice, right? But what this shows, the tantrum does, is that he has learned at some point, if I throw a tantrum long enough, I am going to get the item that I am requesting, okay? So what we do in this situation is just wait, make sure that he's safe on the ground and let him throw his little tantrum, right? And then when he has calmed down, you can go over to him and say, hey, I like that you calmed down. You can say juice. Or I'm sorry, I may have missed it. Is he verbal or nonverbal?
He's nonverbal.
Okay, so if he's nonverbal,
he does a lot of babbling.
Okay.
And he's becoming a little bit more vocal, a lot more vocal, but he doesn't have any solid words.
Okay, so if he doesn't have solid words at this point, then I would recommend either sign language or picture cards, okay? Where you can give him a picture card, and then when he is calmed down, you still talk to him, and you say, hey, I like that you're calm. You can tell me what you want. And then you hand him the juice card, and then make him give it to you. And then that's you saying, hey, good job. I like that you told me you want juice. Yes, we can get you juice. And then you go over and give him the juice. Because this is teaching him, I'm not going to get my juice when I'm throwing a tantrum and screaming. I'm only going to get my juice when I'm calm and I give the picture card to my mom because that's the way she knows what I want.
Okay, you know, I actually have had like he has speech therapy, he has occupational and behavioral therapy. They did mention that he might do good with picture cards, and that's something I haven't tried yet. So I'll definitely give it a try. He does. I do try sign language with him. He finally started doing more. He doesn't do it all the time, but I'm trying to get him to do it as much as possible. But yeah, the cards I'll definitely try. But since I have you here, can I also ask one more question?
Ask as many as you want. This is your time.
Thank you. It's hard to get him to focus on stuff. Like if we're doing a puzzle, he'll like to take everything out and throw them on the floor, or he'll want to put them away. But I can't actually get him to sit and finish a task, like do the puzzle or like a craft, or it's kind of hard to get him to focus.
Yeah. So with that too, right? It's a matter of, number one, you ask yourself, can he sit for long periods of time in general? Have you ever seen him do that?
He when his therapists come, he usually sits for the whole half hour.
So then my question to you, or a question you need to ask yourself, right, is if he can sit the whole half hour with the therapist, why can't he sit the whole half hour with you? Okay. So then that's your first question. And then you start figuring out ways to get him to sit for longer. So for instance, I'll give an example. Look at my room right now. I have a wall here. I have a wall behind me. And I have one opening on that side. Excuse the little Loch Ness monster. That's the trip. But with that, right, it goes into, okay, so we're going to set up a table here in front of him where I want him to do his jigsaw puzzle. I want him to do these items that I want him to do. But I'm going to set up the table next to a wall. Because if he tries to escape the table, he's going to run into a wall. If he tries to back up, he's going to hit a wall behind him. And then I'm going to sit beside him. Because that way, if he tries to leave to the right, he's not able to because I'm right there. And as he's sitting, you're going to praise him for sitting the whole time or sitting for lengths of time. So that way he starts to learn it's a good thing to sit down rather than having to get up immediately, right? So that's one solution. Another solution is that you time him and you see, oh, he can only sit for 2 minutes. Well, then you set a timer for 3 minutes. And if he can sit for 3, then you praise him. He can tell you he's all done and you can move on to something else. And then the next day you say, hey, you did 3 minutes. What about 4? What about 5? And you keep going up until you're at a point where you're happy and you move forward from there. So these are 2 different solutions. Either one's going to work. One's going to be longer than the other, but it's really up to you on what makes more sense for you.
Yeah. And I do feel that he acts a different way with his therapist and with other people than he does with me. Like when it comes to learning, I try doing the half an hour class with the same toys that his behavioral therapist had. And it's just like when she comes, he knows to sit down and to do it. But then when I tried, he starts throwing a tantrum that he wants to get up and go.
Yeah. So what that is called, it's called instructional control in my field. Basically what that means is that the therapist or whoever is able to manage that child in that situation better than somebody else. Why is that, right? So it's because the therapist is to him a complete stranger. It's because it's just somebody that he has no learned behavior with them and has learned that the only thing they're going to do is make him do the work that he needs to do and will not budge or give in. Whereas, again, I'm maybe mistaken on how old your son is, but the amount of time that he has spent with you is longer than the therapist. So he has learned and had more time to learn that you are eventually going to give in. And so I don't need to listen to you with certain tasks, right? So what you have to do in those moments is to start to teach him that that's not true. You're not going to give in either. And so you need to maintain that need. So in this situation, it seems like the function of the behavior is escape, which means that he's going to try to do everything he can to not do the task for you, but you need to keep going and follow him or motivate him by saying, first we do this work, and then you get iPad, and then teaching him that he only gets the iPad if he does the work that you're asking him to do.
Okay. Yeah, I will try to be a little bit stronger. It can get stressful. I was getting stressful and I didn't want to throw that on him. So I kind of took a distance from it. But I maybe just change the surroundings. Maybe instead of doing it in the living room, doing it in a room. And go about it that way.
It's very possible as well. So I've done that as well, where like if the living room, so I'll give an example of a child I'm working with right now, where he is in a living room, right? Sometimes, but his family is all there, mother, father, grandma, grandpa, and he is very distracted. But when I take him upstairs to do all of his therapy, there is no distraction because his family's not up there. So he does everything we want, whereas downstairs he doesn't. Again, that's instructional control. I have less instructional control downstairs than I do upstairs. So you may have less in the living room than maybe you do in a bedroom because there's less environmental factors that are impacting what he can do. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, sometimes it's just for me, sometimes I feel like I'm not even sure how much of what I'm saying he actually understands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
you're going to know because of how much he's able to listen to the tasks that you're providing him with. But you also may think he may know more than you're actually that he's leading on, and you won't know that till later.
Also, sorry, I have so many questions.
You're good.
I'm
glad this is helpful.
We're also a bilingual family, and I don't know if that's hurting with his speech.
It's not. So there's a lot of articles that state that a child with autism is able to still learn a second language. So by all means, go ahead and speak away. I think that's phenomenal. He's able to speak another language.
Yeah, we're trying to I even signed him up for soccer. So I know he's probably going to be the one kid grabbing the ball and running the other way, but I just want to make sure that I'm giving him all the opportunities to experience everything that he can.
But that's what it's about, right? Is to keep them, make them quote unquote normal, give them the time to just be with other people around them. And I say this a lot of the times with the therapists I work with, like, yeah, sure, I know like ABA or I know behavioral science and things, but at the end of the day, a child that's his age is going to be a better teacher than I ever will be.
Any other advice or?
Keep doing what you're doing. Be that support system. Be that advocate until he takes over, right? So, I've said it once before. I'll say it again. It's phenomenal. I don't know where you're located, but it's wherever it is. You're with me on a Thursday night. So thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So we got Alana Talley. Oh, I have to allow you to speak. Sorry about that. All right, and then.
Hey.
Hi.
So my son was recently diagnosed with autism. He's 2 in a few months.
Okay.
And I was wondering, he's getting the speech therapy out of the home and occupational out of the home right now. We're trying to get ABA. Is it better to have it in home?
No. See, you got me in a bind here. So because of the fact I was a center BCBA for years, and then I decided to start my own company, and it was a lot cheaper for me to do in-home. And that's been going great too. So I don't think it really matters one way or the other. They have their pros and cons. In a center, a pro, I guess, is that family is not present. And so what I mean by that is that family can typically be a distractor for the child because that's like another stimuli. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like in case they're not going to be able to focus, but that can be overcome. Whereas in home, the family is present and you get to see the therapy happen in real time, as well as see the improvements immediately. Because in the center, I've also had parents say, yeah, he's doing great in the center, but he's not doing anything at home. Whereas when I'm now doing in-home, I'm hearing a lot of parents say he's doing great in-home because the therapy's happening in-home. So he's able to generalize it out. So I don't think one is better than the other at this point in my career. I do think it's what you need to look out for is less about in-center and home, and is the BCBA, is the therapist going to be there to support you and make you a partner? Or are they going to just tell you this is what we're going to work on and this is it, right? A red flag is also going to be a center or an in-home facility that says that, no, you're not going to be able to see your child during X time to X time. Because in the center, if a parent wanted to come see their child's therapy, I said, hey, come on in. And an in-home, although it's a smaller setting because it's a home and not a big center, I've still said, parents, you can watch if you'd like, or if you know things become a distraction, I have a camera system in place where you can watch from your bedroom, your living room, your kitchen, your another country, whatever, right? So it's making sure that you find a good ABA center or in-home that isn't just doing it for the money.
Right. So do you typically let parents be a part of the therapy, or you just let them watch? Like, do you let
No, I
them
do.
join?
Well, I don't do it initially. And it's not because I don't want to, but because I think it's going to be severely overwhelming for a parent to start out and say, hey, go, because so typically insurance will give a BCBA 1 hour a week of parent training. And if anyone here has ABA that says it's going to be an hour a month of parent training, they're lying. They can definitely do 1 hour a week. They're just choosing not to. So 1 hour a week of parent training. So I'll start off with my parents understanding basic terminology of what we're doing, why we're doing it. And then I'll start giving them scenarios of how to handle certain situations that deal with their child. And then I'll do I do, we do, you do, which means they'll watch me work with their child. Then we'll do it together, and then they'll do it on their own. Because I've found personally that gives the parent more confidence than if I just immediately say, hey, we're doing this, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, because I was just curious because, like, when he goes to speech, obviously I'm there with him when he goes to speech and when he does his occupational, I'm in the room. The speech therapist, he just started occupational. The speech therapist is a little bit more hands-on, like she has me interacting with him as well as her. Yeah. She's real more cautious. I guess she's always like, is it okay if I touch your hands? She's always asking him a little bit more,
Yeah, because you never know. Yeah.
But his occupational, we just had our first session with her, and she was picking him up and tossing him around and just really like, engaging with him and getting down. And so it was just different to see the two approaches, that the two girls have had with him, but they both, have me there. And I do sometimes the interaction with the toys because he'll grab my hands to do some of the things sometimes. And so I didn't know if the ABA, they let you do that or if they mostly want to do it on their own. So they don't have that comfort.
Yeah, everyone's going to be different. I will say that at first, right? But I will also say behavior is a lot more picky than it is for speech therapy or occupational therapy, in the sense that one wrong move could inadvertently teach a child a behavior that he would now do for quite some time. And it would be difficult to overcome. So I had a child that just spit on the ground once, right? And I had a therapist inadvertently say, hey, don't do that. That's not good, right? But then she didn't realize that the child did it for attention. And then we had spitting behavior for like a month until we were able to resolve it. Okay. So that's why I take the approach I do, because it's very significant. Because if you work with the child in that moment, it may inadvertently cause the child to learn I can do these certain things. Another example is that one of my therapists with the same child that does well second floor, but not first floor, the second floor, when he's on the second floor, he cries for a little bit. And my therapist was having to deal with this crying, and she was like, you know what? I don't want him to cry anymore. He's cried for like 30 minutes. I know when I take him downstairs, he's not going to cry anymore and all of that. However, I told her that this was incorrect because you inadvertently taught him I can cry and eventually get what I want. And so she didn't realize that, and now we're working on him understanding it doesn't matter that you're crying, you're going to stay up here. But it's harder for us to overcome because he had a week to learn I can cry for 30 minutes and then they're going to let me go downstairs.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how it was supposed to work, and I wanted to look for any
it's a
red
good question.
flags. And, we've been trying to get in with one company that insurance is saying, but they're saying they're not in network, and so they're denying us services basically. So insurance is reaching out to them, trying to get them to say yes, but I'm trying with another company because they seem to be really nice and helpful, and they answer the phone, and so I'm trying to get a single case agreement. With
was
them.
that you asking that earlier on the Facebook page?
Probably I asked on it on the masterclass about.
I saw that earlier and I was like, oh man, what parent knows about single case? And that was you. That's funny.
So I tried to do it when we were getting him diagnosed, but I was refused that time when we were trying to get him diagnosed. So I ended up having to wait 6 months. I tried 3 times. I tried appealing it and tried appealing it and tried appealing it, but never could get him to go to work.
Yeah, and I just did a single case with Magellan for a child, and they were going to deny me that single case because they said, well, he's in school right now. What does he need you for? And I told him, well, because he's hitting his parents 50 times a day based on my assessment. And parents can't deal with that. But they were still going to deny him until I told them that I was the only therapist that would be able to take him because of my credentials. And then, and then they were like, oh, okay, but that's it. It's, it's very hard to get a single case. So, I mean, I would definitely keep fighting it. But it's difficult on the professional side to get something like that. So just keep that in mind as well, that they're trying their best to get you as well. But that's really cool that you know about all that stuff. That's awesome.
Okay. All right. And my last question, daycare. So we don't know much, obviously, about his schedule yet as far as how much therapy and stuff he would need. Is putting him in daycare beneficial for social? Because right now I'm a stay-at-home mom and he has a twin. So
yeah. So how old is he again?
He's 2 in a few months. He's nonverbal. We are starting to work on sign language, so he is starting to do. I think he's got about 6 signs down, right now, as far as like more, all done, up, just a few basics.
So with at least in Texas, I don't know where you are, but you can look it up.
North Carolina.
You're where?
North Carolina.
Okay, so in Texas, we are able to serve kids in daycares up until age 5. So that's something to let your ABA company know as well, that they may be able to serve your child in daycare to better assist. So you may be able to have ABA like all day instead of just part of the time.
Okay. But do you think it would be beneficial for his social skills to be?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just didn't want to overwhelm him too much, but
I think you'll be okay.
The daycare is okay with therapy coming, and then therapy is okay going to daycare.
Yeah, I think it's great. If you could do that, that's great. The more neurotypical peers they can see, the better it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we will probably end with Greta, who has been very patient and is having her hand up. So I'm going to allow you to speak, Greta, and then we'll be all done for the night. Well, we also have to spin the wheel. Jen, I didn't forget.
Hello?
Hi, Greta.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just wondering, can you give me some strategies? Like my grandson, if he takes like a little cat nap when he comes home from school, anytime during the day, he takes like a little cat nap and he wakes up and he appears to be having one of those sensory overload. What can I do? Yes, that's the only time I notice he has them.
So he cries as soon as he wakes up?
Yeah, he has a real bad tantrum and he becomes very aggressive, hitting and biting and scratching, He has a very hard time coming out of that cat nap. I'm telling you.
I would wake him up with a reinforcer and see how he responds to that.
But like,
So-
give me an example.
Like an iPad, like a toy that he likes.
Yeah, we do that. We have a
And he still cries?
tablet. He does. It takes him a minute to still calm down.
We
and
used
then
to
we have
take
to
a
put
child.
the helmet on because sometimes he'll bang his head.
We had a child that would scream like that when he woke up, and we put him in a wagon and picked him up and put him in the wagon and rode him around in the wagon as he was waking up.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying that's going to work for your child, but
I
that's
know
something.
what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you're saying to redirect it would be
I would.
I mean, no,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that you're saying redirect it. Like we try everything that we possibly have in our means to try to redirect it, but sometimes we just gotta wait till he calms down himself, you know.
So first figure out, why is he crying when he wakes up? If it's to go back to bed, is it because you guys are giving him attention when he is waking up? And when you determine the function, then you can move on to the next strategy, right? But couple strategies, maybe the wagon, maybe the reinforcers, maybe pick a timer that he wants to wake up to. If he likes a certain sound or he likes a certain TV show. So maybe not necessarily wake him up, but put the TV show on. So that way when it wakes him up on his own and then he gets to see his favorite show. Things like that could be beneficial as well.
Oh, wow. Oh, all right, I'll try it.
If you guys, thank you so much, Greta. If you guys like what you heard today, please book a call with Jen. Jen, with us, Michelle. Jen is posting it in the chat for you guys. So please go ahead and do so. The link is in the chat. And Jen, I think we're done. Greta was my last hand raise. And so with that being said, we can spin that wheel.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's see who gets it. Woo! Crystal Robles. All right. So, Crystal, you get a free call with any of the BCBAs. So, myself or Stacy, or really just anybody you would like. So, I'm a little biased. I'd love for you to pick me, but it's your choice. Thanks, you guys, so much for coming out today. Thank you, Jen, for being amazing as always. And if you guys like what you hear, please book that call. We'd love to hear from you. I do these calls quite a bit. And I'm always happy to answer you guys. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in the masterclass and